أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to another session of a deep dive into Nizam al-Islam by Sheikh Taqiyuddin al-Nabhani. Inshallah, we'll continue from the paragraph that says, despite the obligation to use the mind. So I will start reading. Uh, the Sheikh said, despite the obligation to use the mind to arrive at the correct belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, man is unable to comprehend things beyond the boundaries of his senses and mental faculty. This is because man's mind is limited within boundaries it cannot suppress, regardless of how much it develops and grows. Hence, its ability to comprehend is limited. Therefore, the mind will fall short of comprehending the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because He is beyond man, life, and the universe. And the human mind cannot comprehend what is beyond man. Thus, the human mind is unable to comprehend the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, in this, because so after we have discussed the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have established that the Creator exists. And remember, we are still discussing the question of what came before this life. But not just life, but what came before my life and the universe. And we have been discussing the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there are many beliefs that believe in the existence of a creator. What sets us apart then? If the Christians believe that there is a creator, the Buddhists, the Hindus, the Confucianists, every religion believes there is a creator. Even some secularists, capitalist secularists believe that there is a creator. What sets us apart? Don't we believe in the same creator? Shouldn't that unify us? What the difference? It's mainly actually in the how we conceive, how we perceive the reality of the creator himself. How do we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how do we understand the nature of that belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So for instance, we discussed in previous sessions that the Islamic view of the creator is that he is eternal, meaning you cannot determine his beginning, nor can you see he has an end. So essentially he is azali, eternal. He doesn't have a beginning and he doesn't have an end. Now, what of his sifa, his physical appearance? What of his physical appearance? Because there could be an argument that you have to believe in something you can sense. So when here the Sheikh said, despite, because we've been ascertain that not only should the mind be used to reach the belief, it's not an encouragement. Well, it's an encouragement, but it's not a recommendation. It's an obligation rather. So, but despite that obligation, and you have to understand something clearly from our previous discussions, we should understand a single fact, at least one fact, that Islam gives a lot of power to the human mind. Islam gives a lot of strength and respect to the human mind, to the extent that we stated that the only difference between man and animal is the mind. It's the mind that sets the humans apart. And you'll even find verses in the Quran saying things like وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, and we showed him the two paths, meaning the paths of good and evil, because the man has the ability to choose. But when it comes to animals, they only respond to their organic needs and instincts, nothing beyond that. And we even mentioned at the beginning of this session that the point actually about instinct and the organic needs. So you see that the same energy, the same vital energy is present in animals. But what set us apart, what distinguishes humans, it's not just that we satisfy these instincts, but we regulate their satisfaction. You see, regulation, there are processes to satisfying them, to the extent that there isn't just one process, but there are many. Or rather, to even put it more clearly, it's the same action to satisfy organization for that action itself. Okay, for instance, the satisfaction of the survival instinct, which could include seeking rizq. For instance, engaging in trade and engaging in riba, they are all acts of survival. They are all prompted by the survival instinct because it's about gaining and surviving, right? So it's all about the survival instinct. But then if a system of life comes and then gives priority to one of them and delegalize the other. So Islam, for instance, says, okay, trade is halal, but riba is haram. And it even goes as far as categorizing riba into many types. So this is just an example of how we humans not only satisfy our instincts and organic needs, but we have a whole system reaching the foundation of these systems. This system of organization, we are trying to reach a valid foundation, because we know there are many foundations for establishing this system of organization. But which one is the correct one? Which one leads to the correct belief, which will eventually produce the most valid and ultimately correct system that will satisfy human instincts and organic needs? So we said we use the mind to reach that conclusion. Now you see how Islam and any other system actually, and any other belief, has given power to the mind. But then here we are saying that, okay, despite all that, we need to understand that this mind has limits. Because if it didn't have a limit, then the human would have no limits. The human would have no limits. Man would have no limits. But because it is intrinsic in man to be limited and even deficient and in need of something else as a result of his limitedness, then the mind itself is a part and parcel of the human body. Therefore, it's limited as well, meaning it has limits. And understanding these limits, it's quite easy. It's quite easy when we understand the definition of thinking, thought itself, because what the mind produces, thinking itself, it's another word for the mind. To say that, oh, I'm thinking, it means you're using the mind, okay? And we said that thinking is the process of the transfer of reality through our senses to the brain with the presence of previous information, by which that transferred reality is explained. Now, I'm not going to focus on the intricacies of this definition of thought or thinking. Rather, it's just one key factor that's mentioned in the definition. That we said thinking is the transfer of reality through the senses, which means thinking can only take place when there are certain key factors. And one of those key factors, the very first thing that is needed is the transfer of that reality, for that reality to be sensible. Meaning humans should be able to sense that very reality. If we are not able to sense it, then there would be no need for previous information. Any other information would be irrelevant, because there is no way for us to know whether that information is applicable to that reality or not. Even if we know something exists, but can we sense it? Can any of our senses interact with it? Can we smell it? Can we taste it? Can we feel it? Can we see it? Or can we listen to its sound? These are the five senses. If one of these sense organs can interact with a certain object or certain reality, then we can comprehend it. One way or the other, at least we can comprehend its physical appearance if we can see it, or we can comprehend its body, the nature, the nature of its body if we can feel it, or maybe we can hear its sound, so we can tell this is the sound of this. So by just hearing the sound, we can detect if this is that, this is this or that, and we can and we can detect things via smell. So there are certain things you can see even in the house or anywhere by just smelling it. You don't have to see it, you don't have to touch it, you don't even have to eat it, for instance, or you don't even have to listen to its sound, assuming it has a sound. By just the smell, you know, oh, this smells like this or that. So if any one of these 5 sense organs can interact with that reality, then the human mind has the capability to comprehend the reality of that thing. Comprehend that thing. So it would be a total waste of time to be asking questions about the reality of that thing. Because the first question, if the answer to the first question is no, then there is no sense in going further. And that question is, can we sense that reality in any way? Can we sense it in any way? Then no. If no, then sorry. If the answer is no, then forget about it. Don't even go further, because you're going to be wasting your time. But if the answer is yes, then there would be more questions to come to ask. Okay, if you could sense it, the question could be, okay, how do we sense it? How did we sense it? How are we able to sense it? Is it by smelling or testing or seeing or hearing or feeling? Which of these is it? Then if it's all the 5 or one of the 5 or 2 of the 5 or any of the 5, then we determine how to how to go about it further. But if none of these could take place, then, as I keep mentioning, there is no need in trying to interact or even go further in the discussion in that direction about that particular reality. Now, coming back, having said that, because this is just the lay of the land for this, having said that, then this should become easy to understand. He said, despite the obligation to use the mind to arrive at the correct belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, man is unable to comprehend things beyond the boundaries of his senses and mental faculty. Simple. That's what this line means, what we just finished explaining, that no matter how powerful the mind is, though powerful it may be, the mind is limited to the things that the human being can sense. Because despite the fact that sensing the reality of a thing does not mean that you have comprehended it, but sensation is essential for comprehension. Okay, it's essential for comprehension. So therefore, the mind will definitely be unable to sense the reality of Allah, the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the reality, the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But even if you say the reality, it depends on on the context of the wording. But anyway, the essence meaning the physical appearance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is because if we are to try saying that, okay, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks like, we would be making a very huge mistake, because whichever answer we reach is absolutely incorrect. Why would it be incorrect? Because we are trying to explain a matter, a reality we are unable to sense. Okay, and the end result of trying to discuss the physical appearance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala usually or rather always leads to kufr. This is because you'll end up committing shirk. Because the way the mind works is, whenever we see something, if we don't have decisive information on it, whenever we see it, we say, oh, this looks like this, or this looks like that. For instance, take a computer monitor to a child that doesn't have any knowledge about computers, and you ask him, what does this look like? If there's a TV in their house, a television set, he'll tell you, oh, this is just a TV. but it's a computer monitor, but it looks exactly like a TV. And because it has a screen, it can display, he'll tell you there's a TV. You see, that's the reality he knows. Hence, he compares them by seeing the things that look alike, the common things they share physically, and then he says it's a TV. And we all know it's not a TV. Now, this is just not something. This is even about an object we are able to sense. But without the presence of previous information regarding it, we are unable to decisively know what it is. Just like the example of the monitor I give. The most we can do is compare it. If you bring the language of Urdu to someone that doesn't know about the language of Urdu, if you write it down, the letters look like Arabic, look like Arabic symbols. Okay, they look like Arabic letters. How does he explain? You say, okay, this looks like Arabic, but the writing is a bit funky, a bit weird, and excuse my language, a bit weird and stuff like that. But yeah, maybe it's Arabic, maybe it's just the writer's writing style that made it look that way. Why would he say that? Because he knows the way Arabic is written, and the Urdu language is written using similar letters. Therefore, he thinks it's Arabic. This is, I keep emphasizing. You see, it's we all agree that if it's Urdu, then it's not Arabic, and if it's Arabic, then it's not Urdu. But that person would insist. Okay, maybe he would insist and then say, okay, I'm not sure, but it seems to be this. You see, the point I'm trying to make is the way the human mind works is that we always try to map. We always try to map realities to our database. What we have, the previous information we have about reality, about things. So the moment we come across something and we say, okay, what is this? If you don't know, you say, okay, I don't know. And if someone asks, okay, but does it look like something to you? Say, okay, he'll search through his database in his head and then determine, oh yeah, okay, it looks like this to me, but it doesn't look exactly like it, but it looks like something else to me, all things, because it has this feature, it has this physical feature, this functional feature, etc. And then he tells you that. You see, you're comparing. Now, the ramification is the same when you try to answer the question, when you try to explain what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks like. It's even worse, because in this case, as I keep emphasizing, at the risk of redundancy and repetition, I'll say this again. The examples I just gave, are related to things that we can actually sense. But because we don't have previous information, we answer them wrongly. Just imagine a reality, an entity that we are unable to sense. What's the point in even trying to discuss it? Because the difference is that if you can sense something, then it actually means you can comprehend it. All you need to do is search for the correct information about it. It's ask people of knowledge. فَاسْأَلُوا أَحْلَ الذِّكْرِ. Ask the people of knowledge and they will let you know. But in this case, no human can comprehend it when there is no level of wisdom that you can attain to know the physical appearance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not interact with us in any way directly, which is why we actually have messengers, as we will see in the next few pages, inshallah. So it's absolutely wrong to go into the discussion of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks like. Because if you even look at the reality of the human mind cannot comprehend it. Because it only comprehends what man can sense. And as I mentioned, it leads to kufr. How does it lead to kufr? Because the moment you say, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he has a hand. Oh, he is sitting on the arsh. If you try to picture what that physically looks like, you'll end up comparing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's physical appearance to something that you know. You'll search through your database and you will just compare. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْئًا. There is nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing can exemplify the way he is. Therefore, let it be that way. Let it be that way. Now, the Shaykh, not something. The Shaykh could have quoted this verse and just ended the discussion. But because we are yet to discuss the question of the Quran that I just quoted, he didn't quote this verse to prove his point. Because this is something that can be proven rationally, as we just did. Just looking at the reality of the mind itself, you see it's limited. So there is no point in going further. And I remember in the first or second session, in the second or third session actually, that we started, someone asked the difference between superstition, philosophy, and belief. This is philosophy. Meaning going into the discussion what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks like, it's philosophy. Because I remember explaining philosophy is a form of superstition, but that looks a bit smart and has wisdom, and what they do is ask questions that they will never be able to answer. And not just that, they go into matters that the human can never be able to comprehend. That's what philosophy is. So it will become a philosophical discussion when we start asking the question of, well, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look like? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look like? And things like that. It is not our field. We don't have any right to do that. Why? Because it's beyond our capability. It's clearly beyond our capability. And if it's beyond our capability, then why waste your energy there? And I continue now. I continue reading from this green section. He said, and I quote, "It should not be said how does man his." This is because belief, iman, entails iman in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whose existence is comprehended through the existence of his creation. That is the universe, man, and life. These creations are within the limits of what the mind can comprehend, and thus man comprehended them. And from comprehending them, man comprehended the existence of a creator for these things, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, iman in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rational and within the limits of man's mental capacity. This is in contrast to the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is impossible since he is beyond man, life, and the universe, and hence he is beyond the capability of any mind. The mind is unable to comprehend what is beyond its bounds because of its inherent limitation to do so. This limitation should be one of the factors which strengthen the iman, and not a source of suspicion and doubt. Now, a question that seems valid but clearly invalid, end quote. So a question that seems valid but clearly invalid is that, but you people have been praising the mind and this and that and saying we need the mind to do this, only the mind can provide evidence for this and that, but then suddenly you're telling us it's limited. Or rather, suddenly you're telling us that it cannot comprehend the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a question that might come from co-scientists, people that truly believe in the scientific method, because to them, thinking is anything that can be, if a thing cannot be sensed physically, then it doesn't exist. Therefore, how is it that you can use the mind to reach the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the mind cannot comprehend him? Isn't it only fair that because the mind is capable of establishing the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it's also capable of establishing the belief, or rather of reaching the physical, understanding the physical appearance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, comprehending the physical appearance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He gave a clear example without much, he gave a clear explanation without much ado. He said that the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let's understand, we reach the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through derivation, meaning it is the contingency theory, or rather fact, which is that creations depend on something. It's the concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the existence of the creator, was not reached by us directly sensing his existence. It's by us being able to sense his creation. And since we believe and agree that everything we are able to sense is a creation, then it is only natural that there is a creator. So this argument is quite invalid to say that, if the mind can't comprehend the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there is no way he exists. No. Belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not established on comprehending Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. Rather, we comprehended his existence. We reached the conclusion of his existence by sensing his creations, the things around us. And because these things are sensible, we comprehended them. As we mentioned, man can only comprehend things he can sense. And since we are able to sense these creations, we comprehended them, and through comprehending them, we came to the conclusion that they must have a creator because of their limitations. But as for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his essence, his physical appearance is impossible for man to comprehend. Now, someone might ask the question, what of Prophet Musa alayhi salam? It said that he listened to his voice. He has to communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what about that? Now, this is a discussion that I would rather have in the chapter of Al-Qada wal-Qadr, but since I've raised the question, for the sake of clarity, messengers, one of the proof for any messenger is that he comes with a mu'jiza, meaning something that is out of the ordinary. And the Prophet Musa alayhi salam being able to do that is one of the extraordinary things that proved his status as a prophet and messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, should this be a source of doubt that okay, we can't comprehend this and therefore we shouldn't believe it? No, this shouldn't be a source of doubt. Rather, it should be a source of strength in the iman. This is because it shows you how great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. It shows you how all-powerful he is, to the extent that our so-called mighty mind is so feeble when it comes to the essence of this creator. And what it should do is it should instill the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our adherence to his commands and prohibitions, as we'll come to see, inshallah. And I continue from this yellow section. Moreover, since our iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reached through our mind, our comprehension of his existence is complete. Since our sensation of his existence is linked with the mind, then our sensation of his existence is absolutely sure. Thus, this initiates in us a complete comprehension and assured feeling of all the divine attributes associated with the Creator. All of this convinces us that we will be unable to comprehend the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despite our firm iman in him. Therefore, we have to submit to all that he has informed us about, of which the mind is incapable to comprehend or to arrive at its comprehension. This is due to the natural inability of the human mind by its relative and limited standards to comprehend what is beyond it. For this comprehension would need absolute and unlimited standards, matters which man neither possess nor can acquire. So therefore, since we have reached the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the mind, then our iman in him is complete, our comprehension of him is complete. And since this sensation is linked with the mind, then it is absolutely sure. Because the issue of belief, of foundation, has to be certain and definite. So this line where he said, the line where he said, then our sensation of his existence is absolutely sure, because it is linked to the mind and sensation, is because the mind, as long as it's the mind is trying to answer matters that the human brain can sense, then it can reach a definite conclusion. Whenever the human man is able to sense a thing, an object, then he is able to comprehend it for sure and understand its reality and give definite conclusions. But if he's unable to sense it, then therefore he cannot even explain it. So therefore, the existence, when it comes to the issue of existence, then the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is definite, since we are able to sense it. Since we are able to sense it, then it is definite. Therefore, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us is definite. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay, so as the Shaykh says, all of this convinces us that we will be unable to comprehend the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despite our firm iman in Him. That has been completely discussed. Therefore, we have to submit to all that He has informed us about, of which the mind is capable to comprehend or to arrive at its comprehension. The mind is incapable. Okay, because now, if you remember, we were answering the question of what came before this life. And what came before this life is a matter we were able to answer through the mind. But what of the things that will come after this life, for instance? What of the things that are even in this world, that are in our very existence and our reality right now? There are matters that we are unable to understand. And these matters are not only restricted to the issues of aqidah, belief, or foundation. They are not restricted to that. They include matters of life itself, our actions, the way we organize our life, the way we organize things. Because if you look at it, man's inability to comprehend the things he cannot sense means he cannot tell what will happen tomorrow, talk less of providing a solution for it. Hence, we see that whenever man provides a solution, it becomes problematic. It becomes problematic because the only reason, the perfect reason for that, it's because we are unable to sense what's going to happen tomorrow. We cannot go into the future. Okay? Since we are unable to do that, then we won't be able to know which problem would emerge. We won't even be able to tell the ramifications of the laws and organizations that we put in place. Therefore, it is essential that we believe and submit to all that the Creator has told us. And this is because if you look at it, the fact that we are only able to comprehend the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we are unable to comprehend His essence, should tell us how great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, as we mentioned, but also it should lead us to understand why we must follow His commands and prohibitions, why we must believe in the information He gave us. Because if His status is of an entity that we cannot physically sense, then it shows you He is not on our level. We cannot measure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the same level we measure any other living thing. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all those things, and none of those things can tell you the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what that shows you is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of everything. Because that thing about limitlessness, that thing about Him being limitless, means His information is limitless. And that thing about us being limited, that fact about us being limited, it means our information is limited. Therefore, we won't ever be able to provide a system, an organization that can cover, that can encompass any time and place. But because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is limitless, it means His information is limitless. Therefore, His solutions are limitless, and therefore they can be applied at any time and place. Simple. And that's why we must be, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us, we believe in it. So the question of what comes after this life and other things of belief, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says believe in this, then we have to believe it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says do not do this, then we have to abstain from it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this is kufr, then we have to accept that it's kufr. Why? Because we have established a belief in Him, but not just a belief in Him. That belief comes with the understanding that He is limitless. As for the proof, I continue, I quote, as for the proof of the need for messengers, it has been proven that man is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that religiousness is innate, fitri, in man, since it is one of his instincts. Thus, man by his nature sanctifies his creator. And this sanctification means worship. which is the relationship between man and his creator. Leaving this relationship without organization will lead to turmoil and to worshiping other than the creator. Sorry. Therefore, therefore, it is necessary to organize this relationship with the correct system, which cannot emanate from man because he cannot comprehend the nature of the creator in order to set up this relationship between himself and the creator. Hence, this system must come from the creator. Since the creator has to convey this system to man, therefore there should be messengers to convey to the people the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we come to the second issue, which is the question of messengers. But why do we even need to discuss messengers? Where do they fit in the question we were answering about what came before this life? Where do they fit? Because we have already answered what came before this life. Why does the question of messengers fit? Where they fit is, we said what came before this life, and then we also said, and we also mentioned relationships. So we said, okay, let's assume something came before this life. That's at the beginning. But now we are sure that something came before this life, and that entity is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who we must believe in and who we must obey, and who we must be, and whose information we must accept without any doubt. Now, how do we get access to that information? Remember, we just mentioned actually that we are unable to sense anything related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I say sense, we are unable to sense his physical appearance. So we cannot hear his sound. We can't sense Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't sense him. So how would we be able to receive this information? But then before we even go there, here comes the question. Is there any relationship between us and this creator? Is there any relationship between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In other words, even that we will be unable to know without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informing us. We shouldn't be the ones determining that, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has relationship with this or that. We shouldn't be the ones. It should be he that tells us. And why shouldn't we be the ones to determine that? Limitedness. We are limited. We won't be able to know, since we can't interact with him. So he should be the ones to let us know. It should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that lets us know. And therefore, we shouldn't try to trespass by determining how we live our lives. But that's actually assuming that Allah that tells us, okay, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will let us know. On our own, we won't be able to know. But why is it even necessary for man to know? Because we have the sanctification instinct. Naturally, man's worships something. And this worship is often misunderstood. One would say, okay, if belief and sanctification is natural, as we mentioned in the previous pages, and as we are mentioning right now, is why is it, if it's innate, why are there atheists? Why are there atheists? Why do we have atheists? Because atheists claim not to believe in the existence of the creator. And you see them living their lives in a completely ungodly way, without any regard for the existence of the creator. They actually consider anyone that believes in the existence of some super being to be foolish. Maybe they tweaked and modified their nature. The reality is that sanctification manifests in different ways. There are people that worship themselves. There are like Pharaoh, and there are people that worship other human beings. There are people that worship idols. There are people that worship money. There are people that worship the idea that the creator does not exist. That idea is what they are worshiping. And in the end, they go on to worship things that are even lower than themselves. That is, they can be worshipping humans that are actually below them when it comes to stature. So naturally, sanctification emerges one way or the other. It emerges in different ways. It manifests in different ways. It doesn't have to be that one has this spiritual belief of something that came before him. No, it could be anything actually. Man naturally wants to worship something. The most important thing to him, based on his nature, is that he's worshiping something. And as we mentioned, just like we mentioned about the belief in the Creator, that it should not be left to the emotions to determine how we believe in the Creator. It should not be left to the emotions alone to determine the belief in the Creator. The same way, it shouldn't be left to our emotion to organize the way we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if we are going to be worshiping the same Creator, then we should be worshiping Him the same way, without any difference. But if we are left to determine the way we worship that Creator, then we would be worshiping Him in so many different ways. As we can see today, there are different religions and there are different ways. They have different ways of worshiping the Creator they believe in. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always sends messengers, because messengers come with the message. That's what they are, messengers. They come with the message. They come with the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, telling us how to organize our lives. And it's by this sharia that we determine what relationships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has with us. Are there relationships that He left just for us to determine, to decide on our own, or did He determine all the relationships? Did He is He the one that organizes them all? So the messengers are very, very essential. And I quote from the yellow section: "Further evidence of the people's need for messengers is that the satisfaction of man's instincts and organic needs is a necessity. If this satisfaction were left without a system, it will lead to an erroneous and abnormal fulfillment and thus result in man's misery. Therefore, it is necessary to have a system to organize man's instincts and organic needs. This system does not come from man because his understanding of the organization of man's instincts and organic needs is liable to disparity, differences, contradiction, and is influenced by the environment in which he lives. Thus, if this organization was left to man, the system would be liable to disparity, differences, and contradiction, and will lead to man's misery. Therefore, this system must come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." He said the additional evidence that we have, besides what we just said, if we make connection to the things we have previously mentioned about man's limitedness, then we would notice that it's not just about worship itself, but it's about man's life. Because the whole discussion about this belief, this comprehensive idea, as if you remember, we mentioned it's about establishing a foundation that will produce a system. That system should be able to organize how man satisfies his instincts and organic needs. And we established from there that the kind of belief we are discussing here should not be just a general belief, but it should be a comprehensive one, meaning that it encompasses everything. Therefore, it shouldn't only organize a part of our instincts, but the whole instincts and the organic needs, and every single human action we witness today, in the past, and even in the future that will be witnessed, crops up from this desire to satisfy the organic needs or the instincts. Therefore, since that is the case, then as we have already established, the human mind is limited, as we mentioned. And because of this limitedness, the solutions that man will provide are usually liable, are usually vulnerable to mistakes and even even catastrophic problems. This is because despite the intention to provide a way of satisfying these instincts and organic needs, man might end up providing a solution that contradicts his very nature. But not just might, it will actually definitely contradict the human nature. But why is that? Because by providing the solution himself, man contradicted his nature of sanctification. Because since man has to sanctify his Lord, and sanctification means revering your Lord, worshiping him, and worship is nothing more than obedience. Then, by providing the solution, he's only obeying himself, his nafs, his own desires, or the desire of other people. That way, he's contradicting his nature of sanctifying his creator. And we mentioned that the correct ideology, the correct comprehensive idea, the correct foundation for the correct revival has to be in compatibility with human nature. Therefore, any belief that promotes or encourages disobeying the creator actually contradicts human nature. Because as we established, the belief in the creator is natural. And since the creator has provided us with a system that addresses all issues, then it is only natural that we obey him. Had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not provided us with a system that addresses everything, then maybe we would be able to organize our lives according to the way we see fit. But because Allah subhanahu, and it wouldn't be disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not provide an organization for that. But because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us with the system of life, with a complete system of life, then it is actually according to human nature to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obey him as well. That's why we have scholars like Sheikh Ala al-Mawdudi writing a book and saying that Islam is the state of human nature. We have scholars like Sayyid Qutb saying that the only civilization is Islam. He said any other civilization is, any other way of life is not civilized, but it's a matter of terminology. Okay, it is okay to call the West as a civilization, the Egyptian civilization, and so on. But what Sayyid Qutb means is that Islam is the only belief that is compatible with human nature. Therefore, onwards is saying it's actually the only civilization, because all those things are animalistic. How are they civilized? If we refer to people as being civilized, what we're saying is that they are different from animals. They do not behave in an animalistic way. They do not only resort to their animalistic tendencies, whereas any other way of life forces you to resort to your animalistic tendencies, except for Islam, which forces you to regulate and organize this vital energy based on an external source of organization. That's the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, this is why whichever way of life that doesn't come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will naturally lead to disasters. It wouldn't make sense if the chaos and catastrophe and the misery we are witnessing in the world today is, if all these problems are non-existent, then it would be unnatural. Because there is no way we are going against the organization of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hence against our nature, and expect to be all right. There is no way. Therefore, this alone makes it necessary that there is a messenger that serves as a medium to relate us the commandments and prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to live by, and what he wants us to do and what not to do. Inshallah, we'll stop here. The room for questions and answers is open. If anyone has a question, please chip in, or a comment. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yeah, sorry, I came in like 9 minutes late. So afwan. But I wanted to comment on the issue of limitation, the man's limitation, which one of the aspects you discussed was the knowledge of the future, which actually also encompasses the general understanding of ghaib. And one has to realize that we tend to assume that when we're talking about ghaib, that it's talking only not knowing the future, while actually it is simply the fact that it's the limitation of the senses, in the sense that anything that your sense cannot approach is a part of ghaib. So, I mean, it could be the present. For instance, sitting here in Abuja, I certainly do not know what is happening in Bauchi, Liman Mahmoud Street, for instance, at this moment. So it's ghaib to me. What is happening there is ghaib, even though we're in the very same time span. Yes, time frame. Thank you. That's one. The other part. So there's a lack of the ghaib includes that in terms of being parallel to yourself, and then you have the future, which we are more familiar with in terms of the discussion, and then backwards. So backwards, the Prophet ﷺ is told in the Quran in several different places, you do not know about such and such and such, and you're informed. So that the point is, Allah is informing him about things that had happened way long before his own existence or the people of Arabia at that time. And so it's ghaib, even though it has passed. So I just wanted to add that little bit. If there are any corrections, please go ahead.
Jazakallah khair. This is a very perfect comment. I don't think I have anything to add. Is there anyone that has gone? Please feel free to share your views and comments on this, because it helps. And a bit of a story I'd like to tell is that, well, not a story, just an information actually. At the time of Sheikh Taqiyuddin Nabhani, the way they used to do halaqa was each student would copy the book himself, because there were no printing presses at that time. Many of them in the Arabian Peninsula, in Muslim countries rather. So there were no many prints of the books that they were studying for halaqats. So the only way they would get access to the books is every mushrif has a copy. Then he would give it to his students, and they would copy it. So they would copy pages and pages and pages until they finish copying the book and studying it. And the way they used to study it is that actually they would come over and sit down, and everyone would say, okay, I read this part, and this guy would say, the other would say, I read this part, or maybe they have even read all the parts, but then everyone would start sharing what he understands from it. And there is like a senior member, a supervisor that's there correcting misunderstandings and things like that. Now, that's just a style of teaching that they used to do at the time, because the whole point, it's about being able to express what you understand, being able to utilize it, and convince someone of these concepts, because that's what concepts are about. They're about affecting your behavior and other people's behavior. So how do you channel them through to others? And that's why they were doing their sessions like this. And that's why even now, despite us using different styles of halaqat and classes, but there is this key factor that's always present: sharing comments. Of course, comments shouldn't turn into new classes, but then sharing the way you understand a thing, an angle that you have, it's always helpful. Another person might have never seen it that way. So do not underestimate. That's what I'm saying. Do not underestimate yourself or what you're about to say, because trust me, it's always helpful and very much encouraged. And of course, questions sometimes sometimes personally, I like to ask questions about even things that I think I understand. I like to ask questions by saying, okay, this is what I understand from it. Can you please add anything on it or something like that? And usually, sometimes you find you've actually sometimes I find out that I've actually understood it wrongly, or the person giving the lecture would add to what I have said, and it becomes even more clear. So it is just a bit of a comment. So if there is any question or comment, please feel free to share it. And if there is not, then inshallah we'll meet next week on Sunday.